Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today, I want to talk about this whole YouTube thing, because we've been dealing with it for the last year. The majority, I started the year before last in the September, so most of my time on YouTube has been around this, with the demonetisations and the silly buggery. And so as a result, I've mentioned in a couple of different places, a couple of different videos, including the one that I did about Logan Paul not so long ago, that if you guys are interested, I'd take my experience from working in corporate, entertainment, um, and from kind of general business stuff, as well as my experience as I'm still a very small YouTuber, so I'm definitely going to be affected by everything that's going on at the moment, as well as that has gone previously. Any of you guys that have seen me on Twitter shouting at YouTube at various points when they've demonetized a video, and I would like to know why, and they don't ever tell me, but the videos always get remonetized afterwards because, rather unsurprisingly, I was right. I want to talk about a couple of other things as well, which are less obvious or less apparent unless you are a creator, which I know that a fair number of people that have subscribed are, but at the same time, a fair number of you guys aren't. So I want to spell a couple of other things, a couple of extra things out as well. But I want to try and go through it in a fairly kind of structured way, and I want to separate things up a little bit. So I got some notes here that I made just quickly. I've watched as many other videos from other creators on YouTube that have been particularly vocal about this so far, including new stuff from like the No at Rooster Teeth and a couple of other places, to more and Philip DeFranco's take on it, for instance, when he reported it. But also I've been taking a look at, for instance, the stuff that's been said by Boogie2988. Other individuals who are more on the tech side of things, who are maybe on the smaller side as well, like Evos Fox, for instance. And so I've been keeping an eye on these things and having a look and having a listen, as well as actually going and taking a look at the blogs and all the rest of it. So I've made a few notes down here, which are mostly just kind of bullet points and things to remind myself to go over. But if I do miss something, because at the time of recording, I am sure that more information is going to be coming out, more support blog posts, more other people talking, more people that have talked to YouTube and maybe got more back than we have already got. Any of that kind of thing. In which case, there may be things that I miss. I'm just saying, as this is a developing situation. But I've been talking about the kind of suggestions of a roadmap to fix or kind of reinvigorate YouTube that would work for both YouTube as a corporate entity, that thing that I have experienced an awful lot throughout my life. In fact, all of my adult life, come to think of it. That's kind of depressing, until very recently. But then also the creator side of things, because obviously if you don't have the creators on this platform, then you basically don't have a platform. It would be an empty shell of a website, because no one would be posting to it, the same way that certain other sites that have had creators attaching their content to it, but which have not had enough, have not been able to manage enough, and as a result have died. It's that would be YouTube if it weren't for the fact that there are so many creators here and opportunities have been developed through this service, through this platform. They were here first, and then they were able to get kind of off and away developing that and developing their creators and developing their community in such a way that it really blew them up into being a household name. There's no two ways about it. Everyone has YouTube. Everyone knows about YouTube. If you don't know about one thing, then you go Google it and you find the video on YouTube that's instructional and tells you how to do a thing. If you don't have your iPod MP3 player of your choice, laptop or a radio or whatever, and you want to listen to some music, then you pop open YouTube, look up the music you want to listen to, and listen to it on Vivo, one of the various Vivo channels, or just where it's been uploaded. From one record company or another, or whoever comes up first in the search. Everyone is using this platform. There are over 1 billion users on this platform, individual users on this platform, who are kind of engaging with it in different ways in different parts of the overall community that make up their own smaller communities in and around. And so the first thing that I want to touch on more so than anything else, because I think that this kind of comes at the head of all of these problems around monetization, around the tools and things that are available, the way that YouTube chooses to communicate, all these things that we're going to be talking about later on. The biggest issue that they have had, and that the recent changes that come into effect in February have made a point of trying to suggest that they address in some way, is the content. And this is where I've mentioned this before, and YouTube with its content management is appalling. And I don't entirely fault them for this, because they are having hours and hours of footage, of video of various different sorts uploaded every second, every few minutes. And as a result, that's a lot to have to kind of churn through and look through, and doing it with a human would be incredibly difficult. Does that mean it shouldn't have human oversight in a lot of different ways where it currently doesn't? No, it should. And Google has apparently stepped in and is appointing 10,000 members of staff or somewhere to that extent, apparently, according to at least two different news stories that I came across. The 10,000 figure was quoted, to come in and specifically personally moderate content, but it is only for a very tiny amount of the actual populace. It's for the top 1% of creators, which isn't enough. So the thing is, a lot of the content moderation that they have been doing, be it the attempts at YouTube heroes, which I don't really want to count in this area because it doesn't involve policy specifically. We'll get onto that in a little bit as something around communication, I think, more. But in terms of content, there are three things, as I've said in other videos, that they need to be looking out for, that they need to be concerned about in regards to removing or otherwise taking a look at. The first is obviously porn, because this site is not a porn site. I mean, arguably there are more than enough porn sites on the planet, on the interwebs already, that you don't need another one made out of YouTube. So firstly, that should be removed, for at the very least for copyright reasons. If it's something that's been pulled out from someone else's body of work, some porn star's body of work, then it shouldn't be there. But if it isn't something like that and it's more amateur footage, then that shouldn't be there because it's specifically stated that it shouldn't be there. Straightforward, right? Easy. Then we've got, as said, copyright infringement. People who are taking other people's work and re-uploading it, people who are not just going with fair use, but where there is a transformative element to it. So, for instance, inclusion of images for commentary, inclusion of a piece of footage where you are demonstrating a thing that you are discussing, that could be considered, and is often considered, transformative in some way. And as a result, fair use can be argued, and there's a lot of to and fro on that, and there are lots of grey areas, because obviously this is still very much a new industry, and there are lots of precedents that haven't been set yet. But something that's straightforward, an entire movie, someone's entire body of work, a wholesale channel's worth of videos being re-uploaded in a different place, all of those things count as to one extent or another infringements on copyright and on kind of intellectual property. And so as a result, those things should be taken a look at and moderated and broken down. This is one of the reasons as well why I, when I'm doing more commentary-like videos, or when I'm doing other bits and pieces, beside the amount of time that I don't currently have to spend on doing graphics and editing and other bits and pieces that I have been teaching myself how to do for when I do need to do it, but in many other instances where it's just a case of I've got some time to record and this is where I'm doing it, it's easier in terms of time, but also easier in terms of avoiding potential difficulties if I just speak and present and try to avoid using images as much as possible in various ways. And I realise that might be over concern on my part, but at the same time, it's a genuine concern for a lot of people. That's why you have royalty-free music channels on YouTube as well. They are providing a service for all those people that would like to include music in, and like to include those things, and have the time to actually put those in, or the expertise to put them in swiftly. Something that I still currently lack, alacrity in terms of putting those things in easily. And so, you know, that's why those people are there, and that's why those channels are not necessarily a dime a dozen, but why there are a substantial number, and why many of them have potentially quite low subscriber counts. But it's because the people that do use them again and again and again. And so once you've got a select collection of people using that site, or using that part of the site for then informing their own content, you know, it causes a bit of a black hole, because you've got a certain number of people that have come clustered together and done this thing, and there's no real reason to have it grow beyond that after people are using it as a utility. You know, for instance, looking at utilities in the real world, you don't have large infrastructure change on something like water or electric or something like that until something starts to break. And so for a utility that isn't going to break, or isn't going to develop substantially, then yeah, you are going to quite likely plateau. The issue is, though, where you've got a real world utility that people require for their livelihoods, or just to live, if you're looking at clean water, for instance, then when it comes to a utility that isn't as kind of important or necessary, then that plateau is more likely to happen sooner and tail off at that point for longer. But then you've got the big one, and the big one here, in terms of content, is abuse. And abuse has such a wide, vast definition in this instance, because we are talking about use of certain words. We are talking about even swearing seems to be up and in the limelight as a thing that you can't do. You know, where you've got long-time YouTubers and more recent YouTubers who are attempting to be family and advertiser friendly and all the rest of it, actively censoring themselves, actively changing the way that they would speak, and doing those things against whatever message they may have, against whatever way that they have operated in the past. They're doing that purely so that they can attempt to continue to develop their themselves as a brand, as a channel, as a means of supporting themselves, and so on and so forth, which is, you know, only up until a point, obviously, because then you get to the point where you've got the YouTubers that are so large, and a lot of them are so young, and a fair number of them have been put into things like YouTube Preferred, and so as a result they get a carte blanche in a lot of different instances, and it takes a long time to actually unsettle them from their seat, where they will do whatever they want, as irresponsible as it may be, and it won't make a difference. But again, that's a slightly different issue that, again, we'll get back onto in a minute. But in terms of abuse, the ones that stand out, the ones that have been raised time and time again, are things like hate speech videos, things from ISIS, things from, I don't know, the KKK, other extremist groups. Hate speech is pointedly hate speech, but then also we've seen people who have been news channels that have been uploading footage from war zones as a matter of record, which have then suffered from channel takedowns and videos being entirely removed, which just isn't good enough. We've had a huge shift in the way that people are kind of looking at content and going, well, everything's been demonetized. I'm not saying anything that would either be particularly offensive, vastly upsetting, particularly controversial, lying, hate-filled and directed at a person. You know, none of that is there, and yet it still comes down to those videos either being demonetized or potentially in some cases completely removed, and it seems slanted. So that's the problem. Why is it a problem? Well, it's a problem because firstly, we've had the Adpocalypse point 1, 2, and 3, um, which have kind of caused so much of this turmoil that's now occurring. But then also we've had um, all kinds of other things going on in terms of the other angles from demonetization. We've had the various arguments and the worries around the leanings of YouTube and Google as companies, where you've had Google being sued by everyone either for being sexist in one way or sexist in another way, or overly prejudiced in a positive way in regards to one demographic and not enough in another, or whatever. It's led to a lot of issues and problems around this because the policies are not specific, and the way that they are enacted also leaves it open to even when it comes to people who are reviewing videos currently, when you have a 1,000 views on a video and it's been flagged and you flag it up for review, there is an awful lot that is still left up to YouTube's reviewers and their personal leanings as to whether or not the content is acceptable or not. So you could offend one person, you could have that one bad day, and someone could come, take a look at the criteria and go, oh, well, they meet all the criteria for this to be remonetized, but it upset me. Get rid of it. And how is that fair? How is that reasonable? It's not. And yet it's something that YouTube is still able to do with their policies. So how would we remedy this? I would suggest a policy shift where it becomes very, very cut and dry. Porn, not allowed. If it's there, it gets removed. It's plain and simple. Same with copyright. In terms of abuse, if it is a serious abuse, i.e. literally someone being beheaded on camera, some ISIS video, or some kind of active criminal activity from the perspective of that person, then it is removed from public view as soon as instantaneously, as soon as it is discovered, as soon as it is found, but it is held for the use of law enforcement should they require it. I don't see how that would be all that difficult. It just means that you have an individual or a program go in, overwrite it, and remove it from public view. The way that you would need to do this, though, is that you would need to have more human involvement, or far, far more work put into the precision with which the algorithm, with which the machine learning involved actually picks out content and decides what it is. Yeah? The number of times that we have seen people who are, as said, news channels, for instance, or who are otherwise completely innocuous or talking about something factual and educational, or otherwise talking about something that is their experience, not necessarily glorifying it, but sharing their experience for public record, who have ended up with those pieces of content being either taken down or otherwise blocked and removed or whatever else. That needs to be, at the very least, maybe highlighted by a piece of machine learning, an algorithm, something to that effect. But then it should be approved, directly approved by a human individual, because 90% of the things that I've seen that have been complaining of demonetization, that have been showing evidence of demonetization, that have been showing evidence of it being taken down or suppressed or blocked or removed entirely in some way, all of those elements, all those places are like they're not being given either a fair look in on whether or not their content is actually up to snuff, which in a lot of instances it is, and they are at the mercy of something that either doesn't understand its own instructions in terms of machine learning, or at the mercy of any random person, whether they like criteria or not. The criteria for things should be very much, is there active, in terms of abuse especially, considering the other two are fairly obvious. Is it porn? Are two people banging on screen? Is it copyright theft? Has this, or copyright infringement, has this person basically just ripped someone else's content and put it up wholesale themselves? Is there evidence of the fact that that is the case, especially even in terms of people who will take Like, let's say someone took one of my videos and then re-uploaded it somewhere else under a different name, and they cut out the beginning where I introduced myself to try and pass it off as their own work or something that they had found, and they had just uploaded it wholesale, then that would be an infringement. Would I be all that annoyed about that? Maybe, but at the same time, emulation is the highest form of flattery, so I might see it differently personally. But in terms of, should that be allowed on the site if it exists elsewhere and is provably existing elsewhere in that way? No, it shouldn't, because that also cheapens the whole point of coming and engaging with YouTube and engaging with an internet community and putting your work out there. If someone else can steal it, do exactly the same thing, and basically do nothing to earn for themselves, either earn reputation, earn kind of various forms of acclaim, earn money, regardless of what it is. If they just happen to steal something and throw it up somewhere else instead, and it infringes on someone else's intellectual property and work, then that's a problem. And this is a problem, to be fair, that is experienced elsewhere as well, especially in places where there is some kind of factual basis for it, or best practice. For example, I know full well that there's a good chance, in fact I'm almost certain, that there are things that I have said in lists on this channel, or when I've been talking about things like personal strength or confidence, that have more than likely been said by an awful lot of people in various different ways for years and years and years, probably since the 1930s in some instances, considering some of the disc stuff that I talk about, which was developed in that kind of time period. And so as a result, yes, there are going to be overlaps between the things that people say. The differences then come into who's saying it, how are they saying it, are they presenting it in a different way, are they presenting it in a personal way, as I try to, or are they trying to do something else with it? Are they presenting it as an animation, like Kurzgesagt, or are they trying to present it as in a different way that's more lecture hall-esque, like a TEDx talk? Yeah, are they doing the kind of Philip DeFranco show style of things, where he will give the fact and then or the story at hand, and then he'll jump into his own opinion? Are they, as I said, doing it like me, where it's more personal? There are so many different ways around this that there needs to be more nuance and more attention to the nuance and more human eyes on this, because a piece of machine learning isn't going to be able to tell one way or the other, regardless of how much you feed it. There are going to be subtleties that are going to be so far beyond it at this point in time that it's not going to function well. So in terms of those kind of things, simple, cut and dry. Porn and copyright, easy to deal with, just needs to be found, just needs to be worked on and found effectively. Abuse, though, this is the tough one, because as said, we've got these weird splits between abuses being shown as a news event or for public record, and then you've got the ones where it's glorifying, aggrandizing, gloating even, and inciting actual hatred, violence, and so on. In which case, it's the active-passive split is what I feel needs to be attended to. If you are looking at it as a news story, then that's exactly the same as what is allowed on cable news, where you can have images of bomb victims, you can have images of war zones, you can have images of people that have gone and shot up a school somewhere, you can have images of all of those things, you can have video of those various things, you can do all of that kind of stuff, fine. But there's no one there actually doing it. It's a commentary, an observation, or a development on that as a story, as a piece of journalistic work being brought forward to an audience. If they are literally speaking it up in a positive fashion, if they are actively kind of in the process of performing said dreadful acts, or if they are otherwise the aggressor in those situations, then yes, those things should be removed. In regards to the weird kiddie channel things, that is they are actively misleading their audience to think that it is some cute kids show, and then it turns out to be something far darker, or something far weirder. In which case, that's an abuse. Why? Because they are being active. They are not people who have gone and taken a clip from those videos and reported on it being ridiculous and terrible. They are people who have taken an idea and actioned it in such a way that it has a negative effect on a community by it being entirely misleading and potentially rather nasty in some of those instances, and highly inappropriate generally. In which case, again, the active-passive split is much, much more definable and easy to work with, and it means that people who are just talking about a sensitive subject, highlighting a sensitive subject, working in a journalistic fashion, commentary, or otherwise delving into something that might be a completely uncomfortable topic for people, but if it's there, then it shouldn't be shrugged off the platform. It shouldn't be removed entirely, because people are coming to YouTube for all of their media needs in various different ways. That being the case, you shouldn't have random bits of content being removed without good reason, and those reasons should be in the terms of service. They should be specific in the terms of service, and they should include this active-passive split, as I've just suggested, so that we don't have people who are talking about a news story, people who are engaging in discussion about the situation that they find themselves in, either in the world at large or in regards to a very specific situation. They are sharing information. That is what Google, that is what YouTube, that is what basically the entire internet is based around, sharing information. And if it's not actively harmful, if it's not passively harmful in terms of things like copyright, and porn can be passively harmful in various ways, then it shouldn't be just removed. It shouldn't be just shrugged off. A news story is a news story. An observation is an observation. A tough topic can still be a tough topic, but it doesn't mean it causes harm. It, if anything, tends to raise awareness, and the more opinions that you have on that, the better. And that's why when you have political commentators, people like, I don't know, Blair White, for instance, she has raised her various videos. At the end of her various videos, rather, she raises the point that most of her channel, if not all of it, has been demonetized. In which case, it's a case of, yeah, well, she's done some daft things. Some of the things that she says may not be agreed with by some people, but that doesn't mean that what she's saying, the way she's saying it, or anything else is harmful, invalid, or dangerous. In which case, there shouldn't be an issue there. There shouldn't be the tagging in for things like demonetization and the negative impact of kind of the potential there. It should be very much a case of, well, it's within our terms of service. She's not doing anything other than expressing an opinion, in which case, there you go, it's fine. Because if, as much as Google and YouTube are private independent companies that allow for individuals to use their services, they built themselves, both Google and YouTube built themselves on allowing to access to ideas, allowing people to be themselves, express themselves, express their opinions, and actively do things. Whether we're talking about money or not, the fact that they're slapping either kind of yellow symbols on people to show that they're in the wrong, or that they're not good enough, or where they are literally wiping the slate clean for various channels and people who have commented in various ways that they don't like, when otherwise they have not made active aggressive movements in any way, shape or form, and they have just put out their opinion, possibly in a forceful manner, but that's all they've done. All they've done is talk. Yeah. And it hasn't necessarily been inciting violence. In fact, in many cases it has been against that. One of my videos that was completely demonetized and struck down was one that I did where I was talking about the attacks in Manchester, and in regards to actual patriotism and the way that the country responded to the situation as a whole, where I pointed out that actually the politicians and people who were raising hell about this weren't the people who were best suited to define either what patriotism was or who was the right target, who was the wrong target. The people who decided the target were the crazy people who performed the attack, and the people who are the real patriots aren't people who go, oh, we need to shrug all these people out the country. That was literally what I was espousing, that was a stupid position. I was suggesting that the people that actually took care of their communities, stepped in and did right by those other people, that was important. So having those videos monetized when all I was doing was pointing out that violence is bad, but stupid ideas only make it worse, and that caring about your fellow man is the most important thing, that was apparently against YouTube's policies in various ways. And even when that was reviewed by a human being, they said that it was unacceptable. Why? Probably because they were some lazy millennial in an office and didn't bother to actually watch the video properly. They just didn't like the way that I was either speaking about it or working in another way, because it most certainly didn't break any other rules in terms of the terms of service. So, hey ho, the current terms of service are so vague that they are easy to misrepresent, they are easy to work around, and YouTube wants it that way so that they can continue to suppress where they want to suppress and enrich and lift where they want. And this is part of the problem, because that policy in the middle there, the governs content, is key and core to every single other issue that we're about to go and talk about. So the next one I want to talk about is communication. And YouTube is horrible with their communication. They're distant, they're cold, and this has been the case for a long time, don't get me wrong. But there are lots of people who have been going, oh, well, they've always been distant and they've always been cold. And it's like, yeah, no, that's fine. They might have always been that way, but that doesn't mean that they should be now. If it's not working for them, as it evidently isn't considering the controversies and daftness over the last year, then that means that they should be reviewing and changing. They should be developing. They have talked about transparency again more recently, and yet even in the blog posts around some of their more recent changes, which we'll talk about in a minute, to things like monetization, they have been very vague. They have not given us all of the specifics. They do not tell us how and how not things will be affected. And so as a result, we are left with still a lot of guesswork, even around these arguably for YouTube quite specific posts. But here's the thing. The first thing is that I feel is things like honesty and transparency that aren't being adhered to by YouTube. Firstly, they're giving different reasons that don't add up for the things that they're doing. So for instance, them saying that these new changes which to monetization are there to stop bad actors. Problem is, it's not there to stop bad actors, and it's easy to demonstrate that it's not there to stop bad actors, considering that the kids channels that were brought into question in Apocalypse 3.0 were all doing very well. The channels that were doing well otherwise, in terms of, I don't know, PewDiePie's thing to kick off with, some of those other channels that they were finding, I don't know, coke ads on a ISIS video or something like that, those were all doing moderately well from what I recall, simply because they were the first examples people were finding. PewDiePie, largest on the platform. Logan Paul, more recently, huge creator on the platform. All those not so kiddie videos, again, all of this stuff on the platform that was there was very well viewed. God knows why, but it was probably because it was on things like the YouTube Kids app, which was then just being put in front of people in front of their kids by their parents, and the kids were just scrolling through and finding the next thing, and it looked like a cartoon, so the parents left them with it. Whatever. You know, all of those things were doing well. The bad actors that they're talking about are things like spam channels, things like copyright and whatever else. But that surely wasn't that the point of the change for the 10,000 lifetime view mark, so that they got an idea for each channel's pattern of uploads, the way that they did it, and the way that people operated over time? Seemingly not. Probably not because they didn't have that information, not because they didn't actually pay attention to what they were doing, but because they thought, oh, well, here's this new hurdle. That'll slow them down. And it didn't. People still kept growing. It still took, for instance, it took me from the time that they did that after I'd become a YouTube partner, and then they knocked me down off being a YouTube partner again, so that then I had to get the 10,000 views and jump back up to being a partner again. They in that situation, that took me 6 months, say, give or take. Yeah, between 4 and 7 months for me to hit that threshold again from when I started. And so as a result, yeah, that slowed me down. But guess what? Now you've got half a year to nearly 9 months worth of data on my channel suggesting what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, when I'm uploading, whether or not the content is mine, and how that works. Why wasn't that enough information to stop bad actors? Because that's a considerable amount of views and information. You know, I know full well that there are some people who have told me that they sit there and they'll just load up one of my playlists and they will go through either a game, or if they're looking for inspiration or tips in terms of how they're going to develop themselves, then they run a playlist of that specific set of things. They will make playlists of their own based around some of my content. In some instances, there are at least a couple of people from the 100 or so of you out there that I'm very thankful and very, very kind of flattered that you take the time to actually do that to help yourselves. You know, it's what I'm here to do, and I'm glad that it's working for people. But again, going back to the matter at hand, there doesn't seem to be as much of this supposed issue of bad actors, unless it is that the hurdles and the kind of blocking mechanics that they've already put into their platform either haven't been paid attention to or haven't been worked with in the right way. And so now they seem to have gone overkill on that a little bit, but we'll talk about that in a second. Because the point is, though, that they are saying it's bad actors. They are saying it's that. They're not saying that it's spam accounts. They're not saying that it's anything else. They are being vague again. They are not being specific. They are omitting the truth in various ways, seemingly, because they aren't being specific. And if you're omitting the truth, as much as it could be argued, they are lying. And that's a horrible situation to be in. And the other thing that comes from communication, we've got a couple of other things that I want to go into. One of them is expectations. Because we expect, as creators who are working and developing content and helping to prop up this platform, that we will be treated with at least some level of decency. And some of the fallout from this year just gone, the YouTube Rewind from this year just gone, suggested that even their larger creators, who are a couple of million subscribers and who have had great years or whatever else, people like Emma Blackery, people like PewDiePie even, who was shrugged out of this year, and so on and so forth. It's a case of, you know, they've not highlighted things. They've not really paid attention to their community. They've put in messages. In fact, there was the message in the middle of YouTube Rewind to many people seemed incredibly hypocritical, considering that they were talking about unity and getting through things, when YouTube has actively disadvantaged creators time and time again for seemingly no reason other than their own greed, self-satisfaction, something like that. And so when it comes to managing expectations is one of the biggest things that you can do as either a company or as a manager for a team or anything else. You need to have people understand what you expect from them and they expect from you. That's one of the reasons why me as a coach, when I first sit down with a potential client for an introductory session, one of the first things I do is go through my code of ethics that I have to adhere to, and I go through the contract, and I go through what coaching is and what they're expected to do and what I'm expected to do. In which case, everyone knows where they stand. Everyone can function with that because the lines have been drawn. It allows for a much easier situation, a much easier kind of to and fro. And it means that I'm able to hold myself accountable and them accountable, and they're able to hold me and themselves accountable as well, because everyone understands what we're there to do. YouTube, however, has never seemingly managed to work this out. You know, when we have this expectation of us being represented, us being listened to, us being worked with, because we're the ones that enrich the platform, whether we're big or small or whatever, and they crap on us in favour of, I don't know, Susan Wojcicki's own channel, for instance, her channel trailer for that, where it involved a whole collection of individuals who were TV stars, movie stars, Viners that have come onto the platform with a huge audience already, a group of people that no one really seemed to know who they were, but seemed to have worked closely with YouTube itself, as well as a couple of big names, but definitely not any of the largest users or on the platform who have been entirely homegrown in YouTube. Um, and that was called out at the time. And why was that called out at the time? Because people expected for her to actually want to do that, to get on board and try and show that she's part of this community and that she's representing us as the leader of the company that we're relying on, and that they're relying on us as well. That she would have some kind of look. We're all in the same boat. In spite of the fact that she's obviously got a team behind her, probably a PR and kind of management team sat there, as well as a production team to actually help her record the stuff, because I bet you anything she's not recording, going home and editing and working out what she wants to do with her content in her own time, in her own back garden or in her bedroom or something. I very much doubt that would be anything that she would do. And so as a result, it becomes a case of, okay, well, our expectation was that you were this big company head and that you were there to actually work with us, and now that you've said that you want to try and become one of us, you have demonstrated that what you think means being one of us is pulling in a whole load of people who are already overpaid or who had established audiences or have come from conventional media, completely ignoring the fact that your platform stands apart from all of that. It kind of sucks. And then the last thing on communication I want to mention is not too long ago, actually, just end of last year, there was a survey that went round. I don't know how many people this survey hit, but it was a user survey. And I got it and it came up and I was like, oh, maybe they're actually looking to make significant and useful changes in the next year. Great, let's take a look. And I went through it, and the first half was on what I was offended by, how comfortable I felt. And it's like, well, I don't watch all the entirety of the content on the platform. It's a content where I can literally sign up to watch what I want to watch. Yes, in my instances, in my specific set of instances, I want to watch stuff that I agree with and stuff that I disagree with and stuff that's in the middle on the same level as me. And so I try and, as I've said in other videos, I watch the Young Turks, even though they sometimes spout shit and I disagree with them quite vehemently. I watch Rebel Media, even though they sometimes spout shit and I disagree with them vehemently. And then I sit in the middle and I watch individuals, for example, like Philip DeFranco as a good middle ground here, who are quite well balanced, seem to talk on a similar kind of level as I do when it comes to addressing things. But even then, I still have things that I disagree with him on. I could take huge offence to some of the things that are said at some times. Do I? No. What's the point? That's what I choose to do. But if I didn't want to do that, I could unsubscribe and I could remove them entirely from what I'm watching. That's the choice part for viewers on this site, on this platform. You don't have to watch everything. It doesn't matter what you're offended by. If you're offended by it, unsubscribe and go somewhere else. Leave a dislike as you leave, so that that person knows that you felt that you didn't like it. Or leave a comment letting them know what you think. That's all you do. So the asking of what you're offended by was ridiculous, and it was half the damn survey. And then you get onto the other half of the survey, and they're saying, oh, well, what other social media sites do you use? Do you use this? Do you use that? Oh, which one would you prefer it be more like? Well, no, I don't want it to be more like any of those. I want YouTube to be YouTube, I want Facebook to be Facebook, and I want Twitter to be Twitter. Unfortunately, I don't really want Twitter to be Twitter because it's very minimalist, and I'm not a big fan of Twitter, but that's beside the point. I'm not a big fan of Instagram because as much as I like taking photos, and I get that from my mum's side of the family, where there's at least one person with a camera in their hand at all times, running around the place. I'm not really someone that wants to overshare all the time. So I might take a picture of, like, when I was working morning shifts in a particular job, then I would watch the sunrise during the kind of winter and stuff, and you'd get these wonderful skies and like high, backlit buildings and all that kind of thing that made it look really picturesque. I'd take a picture. Does that mean that I want to then share that I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning kind of shifting 10 tons of stock off the back of a truck? No. It means I wanted to take a picture because it was pretty and I might want to show some people that I want to show. Does that mean that I want to throw it out on the internet at large? Definitely not. Does that mean that I want to go and demonstrate things in such large and significant ways that those pictures and those other things would gain an audience? No, in which case I definitely don't want fucking YouTube, of all things, to become more like Instagram. Are there elements of tools and things that could be developed from those places that would allow as an additional tool for people on this platform to use effectively? Absolutely. I've talked about this before in regards to the community tab and in regards to video responses and things like that. They removed in terms of communication and in terms of tools, but I'll talk about them when we get to tools. But instead, that was the way that this second half of this survey, this user survey, went. What would you like? What website would you prefer us to be more like? And it's like, well, I wouldn't like you to be like any of them because I've come here already for a very specific service and purpose. Even Facebook now is having to restructure away from corporate pages and things like that because of the situation that they have caused for themselves. Which means that Facebook all of a sudden becomes less viable for companies that want to work on them, on there as a platform. And so, Facebook may very well suffer from it, but they are developing a healthier environment on their platform as a result. YouTube hasn't got to that point yet because they're still being corporate for corporate over anyone else. But the thing that they don't seem to understand is that we as creators are coming in and we're subcontractors. If they want to develop corporate for corporate, then they need to pay attention to where the labour for that is coming from. And this is where, when people are talking about some of the new monetization options and things like that, I have a issue with that. Maybe not as big an issue as some people, but I have an issue with some of the things around that. But we'll get onto that in a minute. But as a result, that survey was it highlighted to me what YouTube thinks its concerns are. They're concerned about people being upset, and they're concerned about competition. They're not concerned about how we actually find working on the platform. They don't care about how the tools are. They don't care about how their systems work. They don't care about how much we expect from them or how much they expect from us. They don't care about any of that as long as we are here to continue to build the platform for them, whilst they're worrying about all these other things that really don't matter. If people are offended, makes no difference. Because you can unsubscribe and move on. That's the beauty of the internet. That's the beauty of the platform. If you wanted to be on a different platform, if you wanted something that was more like Facebook, then there's a good chance you'd be on Facebook. You wouldn't be on YouTube. And so that's part of their issue. They're not focusing on the right situations, but they also aren't willing to talk to us about those right situations. And when they do, they only ever talk to people at one end of the entire spectrum. When they said that in regards to the new monetization changes, that they had talked to other creators like you, not creators like me. You talk to people like, Philip DeFranco said that he had been talked to. You've talked to people who are much further up the chain, and probably the majority of people that you talk to were in your YouTube preferred bracket, the top 1%. And so as a result, no, they weren't like me. They weren't here to come and necessarily help people or develop them, help develop others because they don't have the ability to reach an audience otherwise. If I'm doing a coaching session, that tends to be one-on-one or one on like maybe 10 at most. It doesn't come down to me being one on the number of people that I would have to present to when I was working in corporate, which would sometimes go up to like 500 people. One of the most substantial numbers of views I've got on a video is, I believe, last time I checked, 14,000 views on that video. It may very well be higher than that now. And that was several, that's multiple times the largest audience I've ever spoken to in person. And I said thank you at the time. I'll say thank you again now for any of you that actually subscribed after watching that video. But again, it's a case of the people that you're asking aren't users like me. But you're taking their word as having that much weight to it when they aren't understanding every situation. You've got even people who have been on the platform for a long time and are like, oh, well, I never earned any money when I was doing this, that, and the other. It took several years for me to get to that point. Yeah, sure. But YouTube's environment has changed. The world has changed. the way in which content is being developed, created, and put up has changed. The fact that now you've got things like the YouTube Creator Academy, where they are trying to apparently somehow foster new users and foster new talent, so that they have the next big YouTube thing singing YouTube Creator Academy's praises. They have raised all of these things. They are doing all of these things, but they are not doing all of these things in a way that actually helps anybody, because then they try and push people towards it and then pull the rug out from under them because of the new environment and because of the way they're dealing with it. So a quick thing that I want to touch in on tools before we talk about the monetization thing, because the monetization thing is huge, but it's also, I feel, a little more cut and dry to one extent or another, but it's less expansive. So we'll get into that in a sec. But in terms of tools, there are three things that have been raised. Firstly, the community tab. If you're going to do things like disadvantage people in terms of monetization, if you're going to disadvantage people in terms of the size of their channel, if you're going to disadvantage people in terms of the length of their content, then the least you can do is give us the community tab. That tab that you have put in on large subscribers, 10,000 up and all that kind of thing, that allows them to engage with their audience, that otherwise they might not be able to engage with as readily or as easily, because videos take time compared to just typing out a thing and hitting send. Is that like other platforms? To an extent, yes, but at the same time, think about what you can do on a news TV show, a daytime TV show, where they go, oh, text in, message in whilst we're doing this. That happens in a live stream, but then also you've got messages that will come up on the screen saying, oh, well, we've got these issues, that's the way that we're going to do it. Text goes both ways in old media. It used to do it an awful lot more because you had things like, I don't know, teletext, for instance, where messages would come up through that hidden functionality in your TV. But we don't have that for YouTube. It is purely video, and what's on the video specifically, any little other bits of information on your channel page, and that's it. There's no other form of just like sit it there and let it speak for itself communication that could just be text. And they've introduced this for people over 10,000 subscribers, and it's a great tool. But it's not being offered to enough people, because the people who could make best use of that to grow their audiences, to secure their audiences, to potentially even boost themselves up past the goals that you are putting in, past the obstacles that you are putting in their way that are causing this distress at the moment, those tools aren't being made available to them. Video responses were removed for God knows what reason, and now you've got other people who are venturing outside the platform to develop that. Why didn't you just keep it here as a feature? The ability to communicate, the ability to work together, the ability to respond back and forth. You're having so much video uploaded anyway, you seem to have that type of storage capacity to allow that, in which case, what's a few more videos? If it's not going to be videos that are based on communicating with one another, where it could be constructive, it may as well be the next controversial video that's going to happen, that's going to cause you even more problems. It makes no difference either way. Allow for the communication, because the communication is how the platform grew in the first place. So that being removed, again, doesn't make any sense, and it's one of these things that, again, a small YouTuber responding to a larger YouTuber with a point that actually makes that larger YouTuber's audience like this person, that sat underneath that video as a response. Oh look, that person has just potentially picked up a whole load of new subscribers. Why? Because they've come in and they have made a solid point, a reasonable point. They have done something that person has liked, and it's something that then enables shout outs. It enables the old community to develop and bring in the new community, so you have the cycle of talent, which is something that I've talked about before and which I'll touch on again at the end. The last thing, and this is something that's been raised in a few places, that people have been going, no, it's not happening, yes, it is happening, oh, it's all going to be terrible, is things like custom thumbnails, and how they may now be removed again as they once were previously. There have been people who have been saying, no, that's not going to happen, it doesn't say anywhere specifically that it's going to happen or anything like that. I couldn't find anywhere that said that it was specifically going to happen, but the information is coming from somewhere, and so we'll have to see what happens, because I've had people that I trust both saying, in terms of media outlets, and in terms of people on YouTube, saying that it will happen, saying that it won't happen, and some of them have said yes, it's confirmed it's going to happen. Some of them saying no, it's confirmed it's not going to happen. It wasn't in any of these posts from support or anything like that. And it's like, okay, well, that would be devastating. That would be horrific to a lot of people if you took that away from them, especially the people who don't edit their videos so much. What I'm thinking for me would be that if that's what they do, I will continue to make the thumbnail, and I'll make the first X number of seconds in the video that thumbnail, so that in theory that pops up as an image in the pre-selected thumbnails from that YouTube provides, in which case I'll still be able to select it. That might be an idea for other people who are worried about this should the worst happen, but there's a good chance that it won't, and that it's all conjecture and extra worry. But if they did remove it, then that means that, again, people who have already made it big, people who have already hit the lowest threshold and are continuing to climb, suddenly have this huge advantage over everybody else. And it makes the lower end of things, the very lowest end, including myself, have a much harder time of even getting to their supposedly small and, what they're suggesting, limited figures that they want people to reach, that are completely arbitrary and pulled out of thin air seemingly, but fine. And it means that the people that are higher up the chain continue to get higher up the chain. It's simple, straightforward, what they're able to do. What are you going to be more attracted to? My ugly fucking Yeti-esque face with all the hair, or something that's going to be more interesting, more related to the topic that the title of the video is, or whatever else. Yes, there is an argument that the more you put your face on a thumbnail, the more people might be likely to click. But at the same time, you've got, even if I include my face in a thumbnail, I'd much prefer to have it set up within the context of the video around me, as I have done in other videos in the past anyway, with their thumbnails, rather than having it be this daft thing that I'm just having to select from this list that YouTube has picked out the video. So it's a worrying thing there as well, but we'll have to see what happens. But ultimately, all of those various tools, the community tab, custom thumbnails, all of the rest of the stuff that's that kind of thing, they should be available to everyone from the get-go, whether you're monetized or not, whether you're in the top 1% or if you're in the bottom 1%, they should be available to absolutely everybody. Because if they're not, then you're deliberately stratifying your community and the users on your platform, so the ones that are already big stay big, and the ones that are small never have a substantial hope of getting there or branching out to meet the demands that you are making of them. Again, that's where expectations come in. We need to know what you're going to do so that we know what we can do, and we need to know what we can do, or you need to know what we can do so that you can do what you need to. Now let's get on to the matter of the hour, shall we? And I realise this video is running on for a while, but there's a lot to talk about. The biggest thing here is monetization. And so we've talked about demonetization, how the policies need to be made more transparent, they need to be made more specific, they need to be made more focused around actual wrongdoing compared to just things that people don't like. That's the way that things have to happen. And the fact that YouTube seems to be focused more on what upsets people rather than the diversity of content and the development of content that people can enjoy and work with is already troubling enough as it is. But let's get on to the new rules. So the new rules that they've actually raised are replacing the 10,000 lifetime views limit for joining the partner program. And they are, you either need to have 1,000 subscribers 1,000 subscribers, and you need to have 4,000 minutes watched across the channel, I believe. And so it's a case of that's so 4,000. No, was it 4,000 hours? It was a lot of time, shall we say? And so as a result, things like music, things like animation and stuff get stepped on again because they tend to have shorter video lengths, so they will need more people to watch the entirety of the video to get to these caps in the first place. So the next YouTube music sensation may not come about through the next generation of YouTubers, simply because the next generation of YouTubers that are just starting now and trying to get somewhere through that means are being crushed. Animators who, thinking all the way back, one of the big names, Rooster Teeth, that now has multiple channels and does so much across so many different various fandoms and franchises and groups of people and whatever else. They started off with Red versus Blue, animations that didn't take very long. They were short videos, but they were funny and they were good and they were very pointed towards a specific community. They ran through various different places and networks, and then they developed themselves out, and now they are one of the biggest success stories to come out of the internet to date. In terms of this area of YouTube and entertainment and so on and so forth. Rooster Teeth literally built themselves up and stepped away from the platform to an extent, while still leaving all their content here, and having most of their channels still attached to this. They stepped away. They've done their own subscription service. They've managed to build out and do more. And yet what it comes down to is they probably wouldn't have got there if they hadn't had the initial startup from getting that attention when they were just doing Red versus Blue as a small animated thing. And it was an in-game animation as well. It's not as if they were doing painstakingly specific drawings and animating those or doing anything like that. At the time, it was using in-game assets and editing to develop what they were doing. And so, they did a really good job with that. They're very creative. But again, you're looking at what requires more. People who are creating animated content that's short videos that are of great quality, but which aren't going to pick up on that time, it's going to be a problem. So in regards to that, it's a bit over the top. And lots of people have said it's over the top. Lots of people have said no, it seems fine because they're trying to chase out all these spammers and all these people that do all this kind of thing, people that steal things, people that just upload these tiny 29-second meme videos, all that kind of thing. Well, yeah, that as may be, but as said, the 10,000 views mark should in theory have allowed them to take a look over those things, develop a profile for each and every channel and examine it. Granted, that would take work, but guess what? This is all going to take work. So whether they want to kind of potentially screw over their cycle of talent, which I've talked about before in other videos, but which is basically the idea of an open mic night at a comedy club, for instance. Yeah, you have your big names, but then one night a week you have these guys come through, and that's where you potentially give someone their start, and then they come back and they raise your profile as a result of raising theirs. This was the first place that gave them a chance. This was the first place that allowed them to perform. This was the first place that they got noticed. And so that cycle of talent continues as your old talent dies or moves away onto bigger things and doesn't return for anything more than maybe a couple of nights in 10 years or something like that to do a special show. That new talent is going to be the thing that rolls you forward. They're going to continue to increase your earnings, increase your profile. And that's something that YouTube is currently not paying attention to because they are too focused on being corporate for corporate rather than being corporate entertainment. A corporate entertainment industry kind of focused thing is going to, at the very least, to pay attention to what the entertainment is that is coming through. And when they are doing that, they are looking at the talent, they are looking at what is likely to earn them the most, and they are likely to look at how that is sustainable. The sustainability angle is currently the thing that YouTube is missing, and that is where we are being left in the gutter. Now, do I feel that there needs to be a lower boundary for monetization? Yes, I do. And the reason why I think that there should be one is to, as said, potentially prevent people who are either not uploading regularly, not even trying to cultivate, people who are stealing other people's content and chopping it up into smaller sections to try and get it past, people who are purely uploading kind of videos that are very clickbaity that then try to link off site, things like that. All of those kinds of things need to be stopped, and they shouldn't be earning money off YouTube off other people's hard work or off content that quite frankly could very well amount to theft in various ways. And so as a result, yes, there does need to be a lower boundary. There needs to be a way for things to be reviewed, be paid attention to, and there also needs to be a point at which YouTube goes, well, you've done enough work for us to warrant us doing work for you and putting money across in your direction. My issue, because this is my position on the new monetization rules. If they are removing the 10,000 view limit, so if you get 1,000 subscribers, and each one of those people has viewed the video once, and that adds up to the 4,000. Okay. Still not happy though. Why? Because if you've got 1,000 subscribers, then you can get sponsored video content, you can access Super Chat for live streams, and so as a result, monetization becomes a reality once you hit that point, either through the Super Chat or through gaining sponsored video content. If you're saying you need 1,000 subscribers to monetize, fine, not an issue. Means I've still got a long way to go myself. I would be continuing to drop out of the partner program anyway, so I'm not saying this for my benefit. What I am saying is, if you're going to attach all of the monetary things, Super Chat, sponsored content, general monetization on videos through ads, if you're saying that, all of that at 1,000, fine, got no issue with it. That's the low bar. Yeah, the first 1,000 subscribers, engaging with people to that extent, that is the minute that you can go, I'm a YouTuber, I'm working on doing this, I'm working on making money, I'm working on developing content, I'm being part of this community, and I'm striving for better. Yeah, because then you've got the various different ways that YouTube can allow you to gain money, to gain monetization in various different areas, be you more focused towards live streaming, be you more focused towards static video, be you more focused towards allowing the extra revenue through sponsorships. You can, if you can focus on that and allow all of that, then have it at that threshold, fine. My issue, the watch time, because at this point in time, this channel is a good chunk of the way to that 4,000 mark. If it was 4,000 lifetime watch minutes, we would only be a couple of 100 minutes off. Yeah, over the next couple of weeks, I may very well hit that point, but it's not. It's over 12-month periods. In which case, especially for people who are making shorter videos, they're not going to have a hope in hell of hitting it reasonably unless they start churning out more and more and more, or unless they manage to gather a huge following to that very quickly. Biggest issue, they're probably not going to be able to do that if they're on the lower end of the chain. So that's that problem. And the way that I see to resolve it is remove the watch minutes requirement. Everything happens once you hit 1,000, and then you can monetize in various different ways. That's what we're going to do. I didn't think the 10,000 views limit was bad. It was annoying, especially when they didn't grandfather anyone in that had been monetized before. And now the same is happening now, where they're not grandfathering in anyone who has demonstrated, they've got all that data. They've got that over 10,000 views data for all of those people who are currently monetized that they could review. They could literally sit someone down and review all of those channels. It would take a fucking long time. They could do it in waves. They could take all of those extra staff that Google are pointing their way and go, they will be moving to preferred after this date, but before that they are working on the transfer and the grandfathering of current monetized users who have worked and observed to the fullest extent of what YouTube wants, which then they need to tell us exactly what they want: daily uploads, specific uploads, videos over a certain amount of time, number of ads on a video, whatever it is that they want to decide, they need to tell us, and then they need to set people about it. At which point then, grandfather those that fulfill the criteria across, but they're not doing that. Why? Because it's easier just to slap everybody with the same wet fish and just leave us all to stew. And so the issues though that I've been hearing from certain people is that, oh well, they weren't earning much money. It's like, well, hold on though, because I've not taken any money from YouTube yet. The most money I've received from Google at all was the 77 pence that they sent me to make sure that my account was a real, actual account when I signed up for AdSense. So I've not earned any money, even though I'm fairly certain that I'm nearly at the threshold to be able to pull money out from my AdSense and actually be like, I have earned. In which case though, all of those people who have been earning currently, they hit their 10,000 mark, or they were earning before, as I was. Let's take my situation. I was earning before, and then they introduced the 10,000 mark thing, and I was below it. So I was removed from monetization. Then we hit 10,000 on this channel, and I was remonetized, and I got all of that back. There have been instances where they've demonetized me based on their stupid monetization things, where, by the way, I feel it should be monetized, or yes or no, and then have the rest be either dictated by whether or not it has an age gate or not, or obviously the thing that they want to do anyway is allow for more transparency for the actual advertisers, so that they can choose specific kind of areas of content and levels of involvement based on demographics, if needs be, to allow them to more selectively target their ads. Fair enough. I can't fault them for wanting that as a tool. But, if you've got people who so far they hit 10,000 like I did, and now in the quiet, we've been earning per week maybe a couple of dollars. Yeah, a couple of pounds here and there on good videos that people have liked, or from the accumulation of tiny amounts of money that have been dropped off. And so as a result, there's been that slow build, and I've been able to look and go, it's getting there. And when it gets there, it's not an insubstantial amount of money to a small YouTuber, or even to someone like me who's got most of my money wrapped up in my own small business, and I'm using this as another way to engage with people, to make people aware of my existence, to help people, which is my main goal for everything that I do to one extent or another, and then also to engage, find out what people want, find out how I can develop myself, work towards whatever it is that people are looking for and looking into the most, and then also if I can earn some extra money for, like, I don't know, a new piece of equipment or a new piece of software, then why wouldn't I want to do that if it takes me 9-10 months to get through and earn all of that, to the extent that then I can withdraw it and go, oh, I've now got this money that has been there slowly accumulating, and now that's benchmarked for this new development, this new piece of software, this new microphone, this new thing here, there and everywhere. Then why don't I, then that's what I'm able to do. Them going, oh, well, they've not been earning much per week, they've not been earning much at all. Well, it doesn't matter if they've not been earning much. If they've been over the 10,000 views mark, they've been earning something. And it might be much it might not be much to you, but it's potentially a lot to them. That could be where they thought their next big development was going to come from, because they were suddenly earning money. And every little tiny amount of cash will matter to those people. Me, not been earning anything off here, been trying to work on my own business, trying to work on my own projects and develop stuff. Yeah? Develop, branch out, diversify. All of these things are things that I have been working on doing. Does that mean that I wouldn't appreciate an extra 60-70 pounds from this if it was there for me to take hold of? Absolutely not. I would jump at that, because guess what? I could use a new microphone. I could use some other software. I could use that for more stationery for my actual business, for things that I need, be it notebooks, be it business cards, be it travel to go and see clients, or to go to networking events, or to go to expos, or go and further complete training and development of my skills, so that I can increase the quality of what I'm bringing to you guys and what I'm bringing to my clients that I meet in person. That would all be an amount of money that I could really use. You know, one day's worth of travel to where the training center is, for me to take part in another training day with the academy that I got my qualifications from, that would be about half of what the limit would be for me actually receiving money from YouTube. So that money can go to a lot of things. It could be benchmarked for a lot of things. Just that it's been drip fed in there and it's sat there. You know, me turning around and going, well, I that's important to me. That's a little relief that I could take and go and use elsewhere. And I'm fairly certain, as has been said by numerous other people, that that's something that you can develop. There are more people looking at YouTube as a corporate entity for corporate clients, for corporate things that you want to do, because that is the way that YouTube has been operating. However, when you've got a small business, someone who has worked in corporate, at many different levels of corporate, for right at the very bottom to stretching up to being, what, third from the top of a company, in terms of the corporate side of things, in both non-profit corporates that are kind of more charity focused and more otherwise kind of about cycling funds and cycling things for the events that they're running, the things that they're doing, or in terms of retail corporates and stuff like that, or entertainment industry corporates, where I'm working at whatever level and I'm trying to match policy and do whatever else. You know, those kind of industries, those kind of things and the structure in them are things that people kind of understand. They may not have even worked in them before, but they know that they are solid, they're mechanical, and they're functional. You know, they might not always be nice, but they work. And the thing is, this is where we, in regards to other companies like Carillion, that's recently gone under, the big construction giant over in the UK, where you're seeing, I think the number was 30,000 different subcontractors that are all suffering because this one place has gone under due to potentially negligent spending and allegedly kind of mismanagement. You know, we're seeing that kind of thing with YouTube, where YouTube is making these daft decisions and they're focusing on the wrong things. They're focusing on what their competition, and they're focusing on what people are upset by. They're not focusing on getting to the meat of the matter for their creators and for the people that they're relying on them from the advertising world, and how they can actually solve these problems, potentially by pairing the two, by actually getting us all in together in some way and actually having a meaningful conversation, instead of trying to hide both sides from one another. When you're on a public fucking platform, we can come and see and look and watch and observe from each side pretty easily. That's what started off Adpocalypse 1.0, where some snotty journalist came in and gamed the system to the extent that he was then able to have Coke in his cookies, and then went and looked at ISIS videos, you know, and had the ad pop up because of the way the algorithm worked. Some smartass that with an agenda decided to make things crumble because the company didn't try and match and negotiate and pair and communicate between these two sides. So monetization, though, it's a lot of people are kind of, who are at the higher end, kind of poo-pooing it. A lot of people at the lower end maligning it, and there's a good reason to malign it. This new introduction, especially on the smaller side, seems too stringent, too aggressive, seems too much. It doesn't pair with other stuff that they've already got. It goes beyond it, and that seems not just unfair to the number of creators that are actually working hard, developing, building, people that already had the goalposts moved like I did when they went from yes, you can be a partner to no, you can't be anymore because we've got this 10,000 views requirement for seemingly building up a good look at your channel. So they've ignored that because just slapping people with this is easier and is more miserable for us, so that potentially it's also more demoralizing. but they're not paying attention to long-term sustainability. They are focusing on what's happening now, and they are complaining about it, and they are being complained at about it. But who are they going to listen to? The people with the money, or the people that provide them with what's being bought? Simple. They're going to be listening to the people with the money because they're short-sighted. The last thing I want to talk about is the YouTube Preferred thing, where YouTube Preferred is now going to get these seemingly 10,000 people, or a large number of people, human people to any extent, to review every single video that is going up from the YouTube Preferred lot to make sure that it's acceptable, so that they don't get another Logan Paul situation. There are issues with this. Firstly, something that Boogie2988 raised in his video on this subject was that could mean processing times for those videos could be pretty horrific. Might mean that people lose out on money anyway, both on YouTube and on the creator side of things, as well as then also potentially causing issues in terms of, again, sustainability, where you're not going to be able to continue to review easily without damaging that kind of system and without damaging those people who are at the top end. But the people at the top end are probably more able to self-sustain because they already have money to invest, they already have money to diversify with, and so they're able to branch out more easily than someone at the bottom. The thing that springs out to me is, why not? Because one of the things that stands out to me about YouTube is that they tell people that they want us to upload regularly. Not necessarily every day, not necessarily more than once a day, but regularly, so that your audience is continually coming back, returning to the platform for a certain period, and always having something to return for. Because that's why watch minutes and watch time generally are king, as YouTube continues to remind us, in spite of the fact that they tend to throw us off on random goose chases after other metrics. And so here's the issue. If that's the case, then especially for YouTube Preferred, who are at the top end, have a lot of money from access to you guys and from the opportunities that has allowed them, top 1% of creators, as you've said, they have them work to a schedule. Actually have them work as if they are part of your corporate. They have to put themselves together, file deadlines, function with you. Because otherwise, why are you paying them this much? Why are you allowing them this advantage? That way, though, if you have, once you become preferred, opens up a scheduling block, and you go, I'm uploading here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. Right, in which case, that makes it easier for your 10,000 strong team of reviewers to know when they need to review that channel's videos. If they deviate from that, then fine, you're going to have a catch-up team. You're going to have a catch-up team anyway. You may as well make sure that they're there with a purpose, so that they can just highlight videos that have been put out of sync and go, everyone else is watching those, we're watching these, to make sure it all pans out. Otherwise, though, you've got the schedule there. You've got people that you can assign as specific account managers or specific account reviewers, and then they can work to the schedule. That way, you can pepper pot between people, you can work between people, and as long as you communicate properly and you know which way one team has to go and which way another team has to go and who's covering the various different angles on different content, then you'll be fine. It's chunking down the workload in a sensible and logical way that allows you to process it properly and potentially avoid the stuff that Boogie2988 was talking about when he was saying that potentially processing times could cause people to still lose money, still lose access, still lose the solid kind of flow of content that they've had up until this point, especially for people like vloggers that throw stuff out there. They may not like the scheduling aspect of it, but then don't schedule and just have all of your stuff run up later. For those who are more structured, able to structure, able to plan, develop, and have the schedule able to be changed, but have each week, say, loaded and locked independently of one another, so that even if it changes from week to week, people can still monitor that schedule and know when to expect videos, so that they can then work out around it. that way it's easier for humans to get involved, and maybe if it's successful at the preferred tier, then you can lob it down to people elsewhere as well, so that then it's easier to get content reviewed, so that it's easier to tackle demonetization and people who are having their videos flagged and things like that, because you have review dates, you have schedules to work to, you have people who have organised their time, because people already work to upload schedules, because it helps audiences to know when stuff's coming. You know, I'm moving towards uploading between two videos every day of the working week with the weekends off, and then having one at 2 p.m. GMT and one at 5 p.m. GMT. That would be what I'd put on there. You'd know when my content is coming, and then you could go and check. Should you need to? Should I be at that threshold? And so on and so forth. So, simply put, to summarise, the solutions to YouTube's problems, current problems, as I see it based on my time on here the last year or so, and the corporate ins and outs of the world that I've lived in and the areas that I have gained qualifications in over the last over the last, nearly too long, 13 odd years, give or take, from when I first moved into the workforce, into a corporate, and then from then on out. You know, it's a case of, the first thing is content, because that informs everything. That's where all the squabbles are. That's where all the arguments are. That's where all the worries and concerns are. In which case, be clear, be specific, especially in terms of things like abuse, which is where we have seen the most controversy and the most upset, have the division between active and passive. So that passive is permitted because it will be things like news stories and observations and public record of terrible events, and active is involvement, incitement, and so on. In terms of communication, be transparent and honest for a change. Open up a bit more, be specific, outline expectations, and when it comes to surveys, survey what matters, survey what we're actually talking about in all of these videos. Don't just survey your little things that you think matter, because there's a good chance that you don't, or they don't. You know, survey generally, survey for things that are being discussed, survey for things that are specific, because that way you get actual answers that you can use, not when you just want your own biases reinforced. Doesn't work, only causes detriment. In terms of tools, we need the community tab for everybody, especially if you are taking away monetization from people below 1,000 subscribers. The way that they are going to more easily get to 1,000 subscribers to allow them to progress is if they can communicate with their communities that they are building and establishing more simply and more easily, where if they are developing content that potentially takes a week or 2 weeks to develop, then having another way of communicating with their following is a better idea. Allowing for communication between different contributors to the site through video responses, which was a thing that you managed very easily before and can no doubt manage again if you so wish. Please reintroduce that, because then it allows for the development of a working community, even between different communities, even between different creators and different networks and whatever else you want to use. Allow us the ability to communicate with each other easily, because even your messaging system, your text messaging system in the site is goddamn dreadful and hidden behind God knows what. And so having the comments be the only thing that allows for feedback is still quite limiting. Sometimes easy to miss. Sometimes when people are busy, I'm guilty of this. I want to respond, or at the very least see and like every single comment that comes to me. I want to take a look, I want to respond, I want to communicate with you guys. If I'm in the middle of coaching sessions, if I'm in the middle of working with people, if I'm in the middle of meetings, if I'm in the middle of running around trying to do what I can for my business, for my livelihood, and for my survival, and then as much as I would like to sit down and spend time going through them and doing more than just uploading, scheduling, and doing the little bit of admin that YouTube allows me to do, then I'm not going to have the time to jump on, because I can jump on and set a whole load of videos uploading and then go to another meeting, come back, do the SEO and the background metadata stuff, publish it, and it's scheduled for the entire week. And I can, whilst it's doing all of that for the most part, I can run off and do other things. Whilst if I'm going to sit down and try and engage with people in the comments as the comments happen, or engage with people in the comments over time, then that can sometimes be difficult when I'm busy. So having things like video responses, where I can include video responses in a video, or I can respond to video responses with another video when I'm making videos anyway, that's more beneficial. And then also things that we already have, custom thumbnails, cards and things like that can be thrown onto videos, the links that are probably going to be at the end of this video, for instance, for other content that is on my channel, those should be left alone, because if you are going to give them to one end and not the other, then that's ridiculous. Whether or not that was actually part of the plan, I don't know. As said, conflicting reports, but good goddamn, don't take those away. And then finally, on monetization, take away the watch time requirement, because the watch time requirement kills smaller channels that might still develop a much bigger following, pull people back to your platform, which is what you apparently want, which might not substitute in a large amount of new watch time, but may very well allow them to then see other recommended videos and spend more time on your platform in the first place. An entryway is still something that is just as important as having stuff here to pull people around and keep them here. They need to have a way in before they can stay. So having everything at 1,000, sure, fine. But then also, in terms of the preferred, there needs to be more than just this extra team. Throwing more people at it doesn't always make it better, doesn't always make it work better. There need to be other things in place to allow that team to work effectively. And there need to be other things in place to allow smaller creators that aren't going to be monetized, or that aren't going to be able to gain monetization quickly, to potentially find ways to progress. And then on top of that, the actual monetization as it stands, having all of the money stuff come in at 1,000 subscribers, there will still be people who are upset by that, but at least then it's one benchmark for all of those different tools, all those different things that allow you to earn a living off this platform in some way, shape or form. And to those complaints about, oh, they weren't making much in the first place, doesn't matter. That was still money that was going to a person that could use every single cent, every single penny that was coming from that to apply themselves to something else. In which case, that's not a thing that should be used as a justification for why this is fine. There are ways around it. There are always going to be solutions. There are always going to be other ways. I still don't necessarily personally feel that the 1,000 subscribers is the best thing that they could have done, but considering you already have precedent on the site, on the platform, in these other two areas of super chat and sponsored content where you require 1,000 subscribers, as that's the case, fair enough, bring it in line with those. Don't start crapping all over people for the sake of it. Don't start randomly suppressing content and all the rest of it. And in that, be transparent about whether or not monetization actually affects people in the algorithm, because there have been suggestions that it does, suggestions that it doesn't. Be specific, find out if you are purely putting forward content that is monetized to support yourselves. Be transparent about it. It won't be popular. My suggestion would be give everyone a fair footing, whether they're monetized or unmonetized or demonetized, because if that's the case, potentially you'll see more people flying up the ranks of subscribers and getting to places that otherwise they wouldn't have, because they started off demonetized. And if you're suppressing demonetized content in favor of monetized content, that person may very well progress very slowly, and so then you miss out on the next big thing that then, because they've been demoralized by your website, by your platform, they have moved elsewhere wholesale to develop themselves and potentially gain success there, in which case it's success that you're not responsible for anymore. just a thought. Anyway, this is now an hour and a half long. There are lots of ideas and lots of bits and pieces that we've gone over here. If you think these suggestions, these ideas that I have had that may very well allow YouTube to get back to being a decent platform, stand out more and continue to progress as a household name to enrich both its creators' lives, the lives of the people watching, and the people who are advertising and funding things, then please share this, send it around. I'm probably going to be sending it around to people myself, maybe through Twitter, maybe through wherever else. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, as always, down in the comments. And otherwise, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, found it interesting or useful, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more for the good of YouTube. Take care.